Hope we're doing well on this. I guess it started raining a little bit today, huh? Jeez. Well, at least it'll be beautiful this week. Pardon me. My name is Sean Gaida. I'm the lead pastor here at Trailside. Welcome. Glad you guys are with us on this drizzly morning. If it's your first or second or third time and you haven't heard from me yet, there's a little card on the seat in front of you. You can tap your phone right on that and say hello. It's just a quick little form to fill out so we can check in, see if there's any questions we can answer, tell you more about our church and more about what God is doing here. We're so excited about that. And some of what we got to do yesterday was our monthly Serve Saturday. And so we had like 25 people show up and serve at Harmony Ridge yesterday and paint and share food and meals with the people who live there. And so thank you for being a part of that. If you're a part of that, you guys are awesome. We got a ton of work done. And I heard from both the mayor and from the guy who is, I guess, the manager of the whole establishment, thanking us and saying, you guys got a lot more done than we thought you would. And so it's always exciting to be a part of that. And want to point you to this coming Friday is a family movie night outside. We're going to watch Monsters Incorporated, so bring some snacks, bring a blanket, and some candy, and enjoy that. We'll be outside, weather permitting. If it rains, we'll move it inside, but we'd love for you to be a part of that. So we're going to be in Daniel as we're continuing. Oh boy, my words are already falling apart. As we're continuing our study in the book of Daniel in Daniel 7 today. So you can turn there, or if you want to use our church app, there's notes in there as well you can use, but we'd love for you to do that. So when I was 17, I went on my first mission trip. We went to the Dominican Republic, and we met a group from Minnesota at the time, and we expected them like 7, 8 o'clock, something like that. And as the time kind of got longer, we were wondering if everything was okay, and about 9:30, 10 o'clock, the head over the camp came and talked to us, talked to our student pastor, and then a few of us who were around, and said, hey, a little bit of a problem. The other group's not going to get here until late tonight. They were flying down from Minnesota and flew into a storm, and lightning struck their plane, and they dropped 2,200 feet in a matter of 4 seconds. It's like, well, I'm glad we had a much shorter and easier trip down ourselves, but they got there, and it was about, I think, 12:30, 1 o'clock. They showed up, and we were meeting them, kind of talking to some of them, and they're like, it was a really, really terrifying experience. You know, like you hear a loud crack, and all of a sudden you think you're going to die, and the plane's going down for 4 seconds, and it feels like forever. But they said the pilot came over and said, hey, we had a little bit of an issue. Lightning struck the plane. Everybody's okay. We're just going to get under this storm and fly low the rest of the way. And they said they dropped down into a much lower than typical flight pattern, and they said there was no storm at all. It was like they were caught in a cloud that had lightning inside the cloud and just happened to strike right where they were. They said so when they got through the cloud, it was clear the whole rest of the way, and they needed that because obviously, I don't know if you've been in that situation, but I think flying in a tube being propelled through the air and having it struck by lightning and falling out of the sky is probably not what we're all signing up for when we go on a trip. No? Okay, making sure we're awake. All right, want to make sure the rain wasn't too drizzly for us. But I don't know if you've ever been on a plane like that. I had an experience like that. Some of you guys fly more than others, so maybe you have. But it always feels scary until you get through the cloud. Suddenly it's bright and still, and the thing that was harming you or threatening to harm you is no longer actually harming you. It's not around anymore, and you find out that the sun was there the whole time, or the moon, depending on what time you're flying. But that the things that would cause you chaos, the turbulence you would feel, or the fear of just the weather coming in, or not being really what comes down to in control of the thing that you're riding in, can cause us a lot of fear and anxiety. But the good news is now, 17, so like 25 years later, somewhere like that. I can tell that story because we know how it ended. They landed, it was fine, everyone was great. We got there and had a great 10 days in the Dominican together. But we don't always know what's coming. We don't always know the other side of things. And that's kind of what's going on in Daniel 7. So we make a big shift here back to Hebrew for the language that was written, because this is a statement to God's people. It's prophecy. It's about what is to come, but it's not exactly easy to listen to. It's actually pretty heavy, but when we get through the whole chapter, we'll see God kind of do that same thing. It's almost like he pulls back the clouds long enough to show Daniel and us reading it thousands of years later that outside of the chaos, his throne is still calm. He is still in control. He is still sovereign. And if you've had a week where the news has felt heavy, or maybe there's relational things going on with your family or your spouse, or there's sickness that's come, or just genuine strain and things that you didn't anticipate coming, where the future seems uncertain, maybe you've also wondered, God, where are you in all this? That's an okay thing to ask, honestly. I think we have to get past the point where we think that God's going to get offended by us saying stuff like that, by being honest. Like, if you read the whole book of Psalms, it's really a bunch of people writing and being like, God, why aren't you here? Why aren't you showing up? God, say something, do something. Everything is terrible. That's a normative thing for us. But especially with the news cycling, and with things like a flood in Alaska, and even now being just a year past Helene. Anybody remember that? What we have to remind ourselves is that not only is God in all of this, he's still very much on his throne. And Daniel, when he writes this, is not on a mountaintop either. It's not like everything's going well, so he's like, hey, I'm going to write this story about how good the Lord is and this vision I get. It's kind of the opposite, actually. He's older. He's in exile. He's under a foreign ruler. He could have his life taken from him just if the guy wakes up and has a bad day or eats a bad muffin. Literally everything can be taken to him. And then God gives him a vision, and it's kind of terrifying. It's not the kind of thing where, like, you wake up and you're like, what a great dream that was. And I see that in church even now today. We have guys who go around and call themselves pastors and evangelists and prophets, and they say these prophecy things, but they're always really good. Have you ever seen any of that stuff? Maybe I'm just a pastor, so it's in my algorithm, but guys who get up and say, you're going to have 3 kids, and they're going to be great rulers, and you're going to have millions of dollars, and you're going to bless everyone around you. And I'm like, when I read prophecy, especially in the Old Testament, I don't see a lot of that. Like, Abraham got that from God, but there was a lot of stuff before that, and a lot of stuff after that that happened, right? Like, prophecy consistently is kind of a hard thing to stomach, because it's not always just, this is how great everything is. A lot of times it's like, hey, you're in the muck and mire, and it's going to be terrible for a while, but I'm doing something. I'm working within it. And that's what Daniel experiences here with this vision in Daniel 7. Chaos doesn't win. Although it might seem like it does, it doesn't. And God gives us this glimpse of future hope, even in present pain. When life feels like beasts are raging, when storms come and when we can't see out of it, that God is still very much on the throne. And you might right now, just judging by like the church growth we've had and by the zeros that come with more money, more people, more time, more ministries, more efforts, more everything, that means that more of us have the opportunity to be in a hard season. And you might be, I would venture to say, some of us in moments of present pain, where it's hard, where things aren't easy, where you wake up grinding every morning knowing what you have in front of you. But this is why this chapter for you today is hope. Because God's not done. No matter what the air might feel like, no matter how out of control you might feel, or the things that might be on the outside speaking into your life and telling you to be fearful, that's not how God works, because God is still sitting on his throne. That's why today is a day of hope, because God is not done no matter how cold the air feels around you. So let's read the first 8 verses of Daniel 7 together. I'm in the ESV version. And this is what it says. In the first year of Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, Daniel saw a dream and visions of his head as he lay in his bed. Then he wrote down the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel declared, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up against the great sea. And 4 great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. Then as I looked, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the ground and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the mind of a man was given to it. And behold, another beast, the second one, like a bear. It was raised up on one side. It had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and it was told, arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and behold, another like a leopard, with 4 wings of a bird on its back. And the beast had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a 4th beast, terrifying and dreadful and exceedingly strong. It had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stamped what was left with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another horn, a little one, before which 3 of the first horns were plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. All right, so I know you guys all did that for your Bible study this week, and you stopped right there. But let me tell you what's going on. This is why I get to be here. So the first verse is really just to kind of set up some time for us to know when Daniel's experiencing this. And in the first year of Belshazzar places us about 556, 553, somewhere in there, BC. And it's basically between chapters 4 and 5 of Daniel. So this dream happens between Nebuchadnezzar being humbled, being made crazy for 7 years, and then being reinstated in the throne, and then the writing on the wall, which was, hey, it's all going to come to an end pretty quickly. And this is when Daniel has this vision, this dream. And so it says he records the substance of what he saw. And so chapter 7 that we are reading and are going to continue to read actually parallels chapter 2. It shows this 4 successive empires. And if you've been with us through this series, if not, you can go back and listen to it, or it's on the podcast channel as well. It parallels what we've already seen in chapter 2, but it adds something that we're going to get to in just a second. It adds that the Messiah himself, the Son of Man, receives this kingdom. That 4 great beasts come up and they stir problems, but that God isn't actually done. And if you think back to chapter 2, there was a moment where Nebuchadnezzar's dream, it said there was a stone that fell that was unshaped by any man, and it crushed the statue, it crushed the idol that was built. And we find out that this was no man, not merely a rock, but instead today we discover who that rock actually is. And his dream starts in a way that I don't think I'd want personally. I don't know if you guys have a lot of dreams and remember your dreams when you wake up. I don't do that a ton, maybe a few times, but I would definitely do that if I saw what he saw, for sure. And so it starts out with this idea of chaos, when all we see is chaos, when everything is chaos around us. And it begins with these winds coming in the great sea. And here's the thing about chaos. Chaos is easy to decipher, is it not? We know when chaos is coming. Think about yourself driving down the road, down the interstate or down 25 or Woodruff Road, whatever road you want to, really. And when chaos happens in front of us, it's easy to see, right? Some of us who actually use the rearview mirror and blinkers, that's the thing on the side. You can indicate which way you're going to go. It's wild. It's one of my great pushes for if I ever have a political career, it's going to be bring blinkers back. But it's easy to see when someone's swerving in and out of traffic and driving 20 miles an hour faster than everybody else. And then up ahead of you, they cut somebody off and chaos ensues. And you can see that coming because what's typical and what we actually look for is peace. Or when we're watching maybe sports or kids play on a playground, you can almost see the one kid who you know is going to fall off in some horrific way right before it happens. Just me? Anybody else? The kid who's climbing where you shouldn't climb, that's going to end poorly for them. Where's this kid's dad? And dad's like, yeah, go higher. We can see chaos because it disrupts peace. And that's what happens here. The Great Sea, which is indicative of all of the nations of the world that Daniel is aware of, is stirred by the 4 winds. And the 4 winds are basically what scholars believe they call it angelic winds, but it's basically winds from north, south, east, and west. And so the idea is all of this wind pushing against it, causing this great stir in the sea where things under the sea are lying, and that actually brings up all of these beasts that come. God's judgment is coming, but it's not the way that we would want it to happen. We want it to be easy. We want it to be peaceful. And then he breaks down these 4 kingdoms, and we see that in chapter 2 as well, when he goes through the bronze head and the stone body and the feet that are clay and some other things mixed in. But what we find is actually that this is the 4 kingdoms that are to come, and there'll be interpretation later. But the first one is a winged lion. Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Babylon was full of winged lions as statues, almost as a deity. And I don't know about you, but I'm really grateful when I do go to the zoo that there are cages around the lions. And every time that I hear somebody gets mauled by a lion at the zoo, it always continues with, and they jumped in the cage, right? And you're like, well, it seems like there's a barrier for a reason. I don't do cats, and I certainly don't do ones that could cut me in half very quickly like that. But it says its wings are plucked, made to stand like a man, given a man's heart. And that's indicative of what we've read the last few chapters in chapter 4 of Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king, and that the Babylonian empire would come to an end and be taken over by a bear. Again, we are in the northern side of Greenville. Every time that I see something on Facebook where it's like, a bear was in my yard, I'm like, that's it, burn it down, let's move. I'm not messing with the bear. This bear was raised on one side, meaning that one side had more dominance than the other. And so just as we read the last few chapters, we see the Medo-Persian Empire, and Persia was a little stronger than the Medes. And so although they were together, Persia dominated, and they took advantage and destroyed other small kingdoms, which are the three ribs that are likely in the mouth, the kingdom of Lydia, of Babylon, and of Egypt. Over just a few years, they came and tore them to pieces over 20 years or so. And then a third, a four-winged leopard. Leopard meant for expediency, for how quickly that kingdom grew and came through. There's this guy named Alexander the Great. You may have heard of him. He died at 33. That was it. So he took over all of these empires with great expediency, with speed. And the four-winged leopard was symbolic of Alexander the Great. The four heads were the division of what happened after Alexander. He amassed such a kingdom so quickly that when he died unexpectedly at 33, it wasn't like they sat down and said, well, what should we do with this new kingdom we have? No, what happened is very like Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings-esque. It's where they fought and had infighting and just tried to devour the other in order to take as much authority and the vacuum of power as they could. Not that we see that today in any place, right? But what really got him upset was the fourth beast, the terrifying beast, as he says, iron teeth with trampling power, 10 horns that echo the 10 toes of chapter 2. Many conservative interpreters actually say that this is both historic Rome and a future phase from which a little horn will rise. And the little horn then uproots the three big ones and becomes dominant and becomes full of arrogance and blasphemy. This is a picture for us of the end, of the Antichrist, of what is to come. Here's what I'll tell you. I don't pretend to know a lot about eschatology, the end times. I know there's a lot of thoughts on it, and every generation as they get older says the end times are near. Here's what I'll tell you. The world has been at war, and it's getting nasty. It's getting nastier every single week, it seems. But what we do see is that this is actually identified in 2 Thessalonians and Revelation 13. It's identified as the Antichrist. And so it would be a lot scarier, I think, to think of the world as we know it right now and how messed up it is and how evil it is and broken it is. To know that that maybe is just the tip of the iceberg of the evil that is to come probably doesn't sit very well with us. But again, what we're going to see in Daniel 7 and what I'll encourage you in is that Jesus is still on his throne. But that's what the human soul does. It seeks out God's. That's what our desire is that when we remove the true king, as we see these four beasts happen, that it attempts to usurp the throne. And when we aren't in submission to the true king of the world, that we will fill our lives with other idols and other false gods and false kings. Other bad attempts that don't actually give us what we need. And when we give and ascribe worship to those things, and we put value in those things above the actual king of the universe, what happens is we fill our hearts with that false idol, and we become the outcome of false kings. And that's where strife and hatred and anger and jealousy and sinfulness, brokenness occurs. Because we've seen even in our own America, which is only 249 years old, where politics has become a false idol for many because it's where we put our hope in that if we elect the right people, they can do the things we want and have better control and save the world. But I'll tell you, church, the reality is the world is not ours to save. It's Jesus's. And he's on his throne. But that's what happens. That's what we see here with these four beasts. We take a moment and we take human power and we make it absolute. And so we tie ourselves to politics, to success, to security, to all the things we think will make ourselves better. But what we really do is make beasts of our own hopes because we miss that earthly powers are temporary. But again, the encouragement to us today is God is not. He's not temporary. He's not forget us. And if you're going through moments of seasons or weeks or months or years of chaos, what I want you to hear and understand is that although chaos would throw you into fear, it does not mean that God is not still on his throne because he is not temporary. I've said this before. There's no event that happens where God is knocked off his throne and is like, forgot that was on the to-do list today. There's no moment that occurs where God is going, not how I wanted it to happen. I'm going to have to really do some work, and I'm going to call this guy in and get this crew right and fix this and just... No, that's not how it works at all. Even when we need something to be in control, we see in Ecclesiastes, eternity is written on our hearts. And so rather than create our own ideas and ideals and authorities and build them up as kings and worship them, what we see, Daniel will find here in just a moment, is that rather attaching other kings as a form of worship to our idols, we need to remind ourselves who's actually sovereignly in control. So he continues in verse 9. So remember, all the beasts have come. Daniel's terrified, scared, as I would be too if there were lions and tigers and other things coming to hurt me. He says, behold, in this horn were eyes like eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. And then as I looked, thrones were placed, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. His clothing was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool. His throne was fiery flames, its wheels were burning fire. A stream of fire issued and came out from before him. 1,000,000 served him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court sat in judgment, and the books were opened. Have you guys ever had maybe a meeting at work when like the big boss comes in? Or maybe they traveled from another distant area, big city they live in, or something comes in, and you know you have a meeting at 9 a.m. And the interesting thing that happens in my experiences with this, so if this is not the case, please tell me I'm wrong, and that's fine. You can send me an email. It's austin@trailside.church. What happens is everyone arrives and waits. And there's uneasiness, and people having coffee and trying to talk about the game yesterday to kind of break some of that. And then there's a seat that is saved, that is purposed for that person to walk in. And when they walk in, the room changes. The people are waiting. And when they sit down, the meeting begins. And they have things to say and to share and to lead. And it's because of the seat of authority that's been ascribed to that person that everybody stops and listens. Don't dare interrupt or talk over that person. Because we know that they are in control. They are the one who is the authority. And that's really what Daniel is showing us here. It's like, listen, yeah, these beasts are all over the place. The wind is swirling. There's chaos, and these beasts come arise, and they show their fangs, and each one is worse than the other. And there's a lot of fear that would come because the people that are gathered. But then, in the moment where panic should ensue, I looked, and the Ancient of Days took his seat. Because in the chaos, the Ancient of Days is still present. This is the only place in all of Scripture that the Ancient of Days is mentioned as a term for the Father. And it says he doesn't just enter the room and sit down and go, what's going on here? As he walks in, his authority goes before him. It is a show that happens. He takes his seat in white garments that are glowing and a blazing throne on wheels, which Ezekiel 1 talks about. It's terrifying to go look at. It's wheels full of eyes and fire everywhere. Like, it's not something you're going to be like, oh, that's neat. It will get your attention. And then a river of fire comes, and there's tens of thousands of tens of thousands of tens of thousands of servants standing there with him, and the heavenly courtroom opens, and he opens his book. And it's a very intentional contrast here. It's all the chaos that is in front of Daniel, and all the fear and all the animals and all the things that would scream at you that you should be scared. And then God the Father comes and sits down, the Ancient of Days, and sits in authority and opens his book and begins court. The contrast of turbulent sea below versus a tranquil throne above, that's who God is. That's who we worship. That's who we follow. And the reality, church, for us is that when the world is spinning, when things would cause you fear, when it looks like your marriage can't be saved, or your child has gone far off, or the market's going to crash, or your job isn't there, your health is declining, and tragedy and disease strike, when all of those things come, what we are called to do is to lift our eyes above it, that God is not pacing heaven, he is seated on the throne. Our present pain never cancels God's eternal sovereignty. A.W. Tozer says it like this in his book, The Knowledge of the Holy, which I'd recommend to anybody. He says, while it looks like things are out of control, behind the scenes there is a God who has not surrendered his authority. When it looks like your life is out of control, when it looks like you can't fix things and put them all together and make it all better, what we have to remind ourselves is that behind the scenes, that God, the Ancient of Days, has not surrendered his authority. That God has not given up, that he is still active. And we tend to want God to give up sometimes, don't we? Because if God can just give up and let us to our own devices, then we also can give up. Then we also can go, it's not worth it anymore. Or I'm just a bad person, or I'm incapable of being loved, or whatever it might be. If God would just go, I'm done with you, and kick us out of the club, then we can go, finally I can breathe. I'll do whatever I want. But God is not in the business of giving up on you because that's not in his character to do so. He's incapable of that. And so we see judgment on the beast come and the Son of Man enthroned. Let me read verse 11 to you. I looked then because of the sound of the great words that the horn was speaking. Remember the horn, the Antichrist, blaspheme, right? And arrogance and all the envy, greed, all that other junk that we don't want in our lives. I looked then because of the sound of the great words the horn was speaking. And as I looked, the beast was killed, and its body destroyed and given over to be burned with fire. As for the rest of the beasts, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So God takes his seat at the throne. This Antichrist figure is boasting and talking about its greatness, and God goes, whoosh, nope, done, fire, burn. That's a statement of victory. That's for you. That's for me. All of the evils and things that would slander and throw out death to us and throw out fear to us, at the appointed time, God will go, you're done. No more. And not just remove it, but cut it off completely. Kill it. Throw it in the fire. Be done with it. It has no more effect. It has no more voice. That is the gospel. That's the good news for you. That yes, this life is hard and it's full of toil, but this is not the end for us. Can I be honest? If this is all we get, you will see me in the throes of depression and fear. If this is all we have, yeah, like life is great sometimes, but it's hard sometimes. We're always either going up to the mountaintop or down to the valley. But the one place that we need authority and why we submit ourselves to the authority of the Ancient of Days, the creator of all things, the God of the universe, is that he knows you and loves you and cares for you, and that those things that would cause fear in you and yell and scream at you actually have no power over you. Because God strikes it out, throws it into the fire. The boastful horn that runs his mouth to the last second, judgment falls on. This is what the gospel is. Dominion is stripped from these authorities. The wicked are destroyed. Prior kingdoms only linger in cultural remnant at best. And we see the center of the vision where he says, behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like the Son of Man. Verse 13. This is So good. I wish I had an hour to preach this, but I don't. So God strikes them down. He takes their dominion. And in verse 13, I saw in the night visions, and behold, with the clouds of heaven there came one like a son of man. And he came to the Ancient of Days and was presented before him. And to him was given dominion and a glory and a kingdom, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom one that shall not be destroyed. Oops, sorry, I didn't block the mic like I thought I did. This is actually the most commonly quoted verse in the book of Daniel in the New Testament. Because in the Old Testament, only God rides in the clouds. And we see this title, the Son of Man, which is mentioned 81 times in the gospel, this title specifically. The Son of Man that is both truly human and truly divine. The Messiah. This is the verse that Jesus most applies to himself. In fact, him calling himself the Son of Man is what began the Pharisees desiring to kill Jesus in the first place. And then they finish that off in the garden and they say, Who are you? You say that you are the great I am. And Jesus' response is, I am who you say I am, which is a statement that God made to Abraham back in the Old Testament. And they go, that's it, blasphemy, and they kill him. But they didn't know. They didn't know by killing him, they were just going to raise him right back up. By putting him on a cross, he was only going to triumphantly walk out of a grave. And this is our future. Chapter 2, stone that was cut without human hands now has a name, and his name is the Messiah. This is your future, church. Injustice and fear, pain and tragedy, they don't get the last word. You know who does? The Messiah, the Son of Man. The one who is seated on the throne in the midst of all the chaos, who is over all of it in sovereignty. That's who we worship. Like, y'all, have some excitement. Have some joy in this. Take peace in this. This is why this is the word that we hope to give everybody in the entire world. Yeah, the world's jacked up. Yes, news cycles go. Yes, evil happens and people do terrible things, but we are not under the dominion of evil. We are under the sovereign hand of God, who created everything, including you and everything you love. And he says, his promise is that in the midst of chaos, he sits on his throne, he holds court, and when he strikes down the kings of the world, the bad interpretations of God, he gives us grace and mercy and peace and forgiveness, and we get to be with him. Fear doesn't get the last word, Jesus does. And so when the headlines roar, when fear strikes, when you fail and think you cannot be picked back up, remember who already holds the kingdom. But that doesn't mean that experiencing this doesn't mean that you won't have tough times. Daniel, who receives this vision, isn't like, all right, cool, that was great. I'm going to move on with my next part of life. No, go to verse 15. What does he say? And as for me, Daniel, my spirit within me was anxious, and the visions of my head alarmed me. It does not mean that as Christians, things happen and we're like, okay, whatever. It'll be fine. It doesn't mean that when tragedy strikes, we're not supposed to be like, oh, well, heaven will be great. See you there. We still are human. We still are allowed to feel things. We should still fight for that which is good. Genuinely. We should consistently push ourselves toward making this world a better place, making Jesus more known, and not being in slavery to things that harm us, but being overcomers of those things which wish to enslave us. And Daniel is distressed. He is anxious. He is upset. And so he asks God for clarity. And the question that you've got to battle with is, when you are distressed, when you are overcome with anxiety, to whom or what do you run to? For some of us, it's to detach completely, to disassociate and to run away and act like it's not there. For others, we run to drugs of choice, whether it's something that is a narcotic or alcohol, or whether it's just movies and entertainment. video games, Netflix, sports, whatever it might be. And what God calls us to is to remind us that He is within that chaos, making it peaceful, reigning over it. James 1, verse 5 says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. And so Daniel does that. He says, hey, can you please tell me what the heck is going on? Because it's terrifying. Verse 16, I approached one of those who stood there and asked him the truth concerning all this. So he told me and made known to me the interpretation of the things. These 4 great beasts are 4 kings who shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, forever, and ever. Then I desired to know the truth about the 4th beast, which was different from all the rest, exceedingly terrifying, with its teeth of iron and claws of bronze, and which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped out what was left with its feet. And about the 10 horns that were on its head, and the other horn that came up, before which the 3 of them fell, the horn that had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things, and that seemed greater than its companions. For as I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed over them until the Ancient of Days came. And judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. So Daniel hears from this angel. He says, oh yeah, here's the dream. And Daniel goes, oh, sounds good. Okay, moving on. No. Daniel's like, okay, I hear that, but what about this 4th one? Because here's the deal. He is terrifying, and he has iron teeth and big claws, and he's really scary, and he's bigger than the rest of them, and he's terrifying, and he wants to kill us, and he's going to do mean things. That's okay for us to wonder these things, church. It's okay for you to seek God and God to say, hey, here's what's going on, and go, okay, but what else? To continue to go to prayer, to pursue God and go, God, I need guidance. God, I need wisdom. God, I know that you're in control, but can you please just say something? The Psalms are rife with this. With guys who were men after God's own heart. People who serve God and follow God, and they're going, God, where are you? My enemies overtake me. I'm about to die. I know you're good, but are you good right now? Because maybe you're busy and I'm about to die and this is really bad and I'm about to get killed and I'm terrified. It's okay to go to God with these concerns. That's what Daniel does here. He goes, that's cool, like you get the vision, but what about this thing that's absolutely excruciatingly awful? Because here's what else he does. He speaks arrogant and blasphemes. And he hurts the saints and the people who are just trying to walk through life. He is causing harm. Can you please tell me what the deal is with this thing? He presses in on this one who is warring against the saints, who is wearing them out, as verse 25 says. It's not just a one-time thing. This is a consistent grind against the hearts of God's people. And Daniel sees that. He sees that and says, can you help me understand? It's not just a single crisis. And so the angel continues and says, until the Ancient of Days comes, and judgment will be given, and the time will come when the saints, us, will possess the kingdom. And thus he said, as for the 4th beast, there shall be a 4th kingdom on earth, which shall be different from all the kingdoms, and it shall devour the whole earth, and trample it down, and break it to pieces. Who's ready for that? Y'all excited? It's going to get real bad. And as for the 10 horns, out of this kingdom 10 kings shall arise, and another shall arise after them, and he shall be different from the former ones, and shall put down 3 kings. He shall speak words against the Most High, shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times and the law. And they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time, about 3.5 years. But the court shall sit in judgment, and his dominion shall be taken away, to be consumed and destroyed to the end. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Note this beautiful tension. Yeah, it's going to be scary. Yeah, a king is going to arise unlike one we've ever seen, which you can go back into Revelation and see the connection made to the Antichrist. Yeah, it's a real thing. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And hardship will come. But the saints receive the kingdom. God exercises his dominion, his power over all those things, and wipes them out. And he gives the saints his kingdom to be a co-heir, that we also will be in this place that is promised, that God has made known for us. We are within his kingdom. This is not our home. This 80-ish years we get is not the full history of you and I. But this prophecy is not for speculation, but for motivation. Because if that's true, then how are we living? What are we doing? God's people, us, if you follow the Lord, you will suffer seasons of pressure and pain. And the Antichrist and the powers that are not flesh and blood, but rulers and principalities, as Paul says in Romans, that they will strike us. But here's the good news, that the Ancient of Days will arrive, and he will open his book, and court will happen, and we will be made free. Your endurance now is anchored to his verdict then. How you persevere is based on where you put your hope. And church, this is our hope. That the cross has spoken, that the grave is empty, that Christ is victorious. And if that is true, and God is not able to be knocked off his throne, then when the winds stir, and when the sea erupts, and when beasts come, and when they attempt to take your very life from you or all the things around you, our reminder is that God is sovereign and sitting on his throne. And at his appointed time, when he is ready, he will open up the book, he will strike down the evil, and we will have a place with him forever. That is the gospel. Because it's not a place that can be taken from you. It's not a place that you have to earn. It's not Jesus and anything. In fact, if you add anything to Jesus, that's not Jesus at all. That's not the gospel at all. It is not about what we do, but what he has done. And his promise is when the lake stirs and when the beasts come, that he has the authority and dominion and power to strike it down, to throw it into the fire, and to bring us into full redemption. This is the hope. It's not so we can build nice buildings. It's not so we can just have great marriages, have good kids. So when people think of us, they'll be like, he is such a nice person. No, it's that what we are striving for is to be people who live as people who are redeemed and in the kingdom and sovereign hand of God, the creator of all things, the hope of the world. And John Calvin, as he was making writings on Daniel 7, said this: when we look at the confusion of the world, we must lift our eyes to the throne of God. For though the earth is in turmoil, God remains unshaken and is guiding all things to his appointed end. Because the beasts that Daniel sees carry us to the cross. Centuries later, as Jesus stood before the Sanhedrin, it's this chapter that he quotes. He says, you will see the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees, those who make up the Sanhedrin, cried blasphemy. But what he was doing was identifying himself as Daniel's Son of Man, as the great stone that was not formed by any human hands, who crushes the kingdoms of evil and of man and stands strong and sits on the throne by the Ancient of Days. That at the cross, the beasts of the empire, the religions that are false and throwing people into hell, and the pride that conspires to kill the very things that are good within us and this world, that they all will sit under the Ancient of Days. And that the same way that we are vindicated by an empty grave, hope will outlive horror. That a bloody cross that once held our Savior as he died was not enough to hold him down, and that when he walked out of the grave a few days later, that was the moment where victory happened, where the beast was struck down and where God continued to reign supreme. Because our future hope, church, our future hope is brightest in the presence of darkness. As I mentioned, we're just a little over a year past Helene. And I remember that first Saturday night, sitting in my house, when it got dark. It just got dark. Y'all remember that? Electricity is a great thing. I'm so thankful to be born this time and not like 300 years ago. That's an aside. That doesn't matter at all right now. But I remember my 4-year-old, who's now 5, because that's how age works. That 4-year-old at the time was terrified. Didn't want to go back in his room. He just wanted to stay with us. And we were kind of searching for flashlights and things, and we had a lantern that we bought. And so we put the lantern in our room, and we all gathered in our hot room because in addition to having no power, it was also perfect that it was like 907 degrees in the middle of October. You remember that? And my son was scared to close his eyes. And so we put the lantern in the middle of the room. And we said, Bud, we're going to turn this light on. And even though it's dark, watch what the light touches. And if you wake up in the middle of the night and you're scared, you can look around and you can see your mom and dad. You can see your brother and your sister. You can see your dog. Everything that you value in this room that is safe. Because although darkness would attempt to overtake, light is made brightest in darkness. Light shows up the most in a dark room. And Daniel didn't receive this vision and comfort. He got it when he was in exile. But God often gives us the clearest glimpses of heaven when life on earth feels most uncertain. Maybe you're waiting for healing. Maybe you're praying for a prodigal child, or maybe you're standing in faith begging God to bring visible change, and it's not happening. And I want to tell you this, that God may not remove the storm, but He will allow you to lift your eyes above it. He might not immediately take the lion's den that we talked a few weeks ago away, but He will shut the mouth of the lion, which seeks to kill and destroy, much like the enemy does to us. But you cannot let the temporary blind you to the eternal, church. He's already shown us the ending. The Son of Man reigns. The question is where you place your hope in those moments. Is it in the current circumstance? The things that would throw fear into you, tell you you're not good enough? Or that God isn't in control and doesn't care, that you can't fix this? Or do you place it in the promised future? Because although present pain does not erase future hope, when Daniel saw the throne of judgment, it's the same that we see with the cross, that the cross led to an empty grave. And that mercy qualifies us to the kingdom. Not what we do. God's grace. It's the free gift. He saw the Son of Man receive the kingdom, and we get to receive the risen Christ and share with His saints to celebrate. We don't sing songs on Sunday because that's just what you do at church. We sing them as statements of truth. Only one head can wear the crown. There's no body in the grave. Nothing else can come in authority over God's chosen people because He reigns. He has defeated a cross and defeated a grave, done what we could not, and that gives us hope. So because Jesus rose, this present pain you might be in can never erase the future hope and promise because God cannot and will not fail. Augustine says it this way in The City of God. He said, "The city of God shall be everlasting. Though the kingdoms of men rise and fall, for the kingdom of Christ, it shall never be destroyed." Church, God gives us glimpses of the future, not to satisfy our curiosity, but to strengthen our faith. The beasts of this world will pass. Time heals some of them, but the truth of the sovereignty of God is that He is always working within our pain and within our hardship, and those things will pass, but the Ancient of Days and the Son of Man will not. When life feels chaotic, remember, heaven is calm. When the beasts roar in your life, remember, the throne is still occupied, and it's not by the beasts. When pain feels endless, remind yourself, the Son of Man is coming with the clouds of heaven. writing them in the only way he can, the only way we can't, rather, in any way he wants to, at the time he wants to give us hope. We have to live like people who have already seen the ending. And having hope in those moments, church, I want to tell you, having hope in that stuff is not denial. It's not the magic Jesus pill. It's not where the world is crumbling. You're like, yeah, but God is good. I'll be fine. Having hope in those things is not denial of what's around you. It is defiance against despair. It is to say that no weapon formed against me will prosper. It is to say that even in exile, as Jeremiah 29 says, that God has a plan and a purpose for us. It is to say that there's nothing that can come against you in this world that God is not capable of and already has overcome. So walk in submission to him and watch him work it out instead of you toiling and fighting to make it work, because he has already won. Hope is not denial. It is defiance against despair. So where is your hope anchored today? Politics? Possessions? Stuff you have? Or is it anchored to the peace of Christ, who, as chaos is erupting, sits on his throne and holds court and finds you not guilty? And this week, if your anxiety rises, or if you're fighting through something hard, I would encourage you to pause and pray and just say, Lord, help me to see you as Daniel did. Seated on the throne with my eyes fixed on eternity. And church, let the coming King, the promise of the one who is sovereign, reshape your present pain. Because when you see the future clearly, you can live faithfully in the present. You might be walking through a valley right now. I don't know. You might be walking through sickness, disease, heartbreak. Maybe just you're exhausted. And maybe that fear won't let you sleep. You might feel like your prayers are just bouncing off the walls or going into the air and no one's present to them and God's not listening. But I'll tell you this, that even if God seems distant, he's on his throne and he is still there. Because you've got to trust and know that your circumstances in your life have not canceled God's promises. The same God who shut the lion's mouth, the same God who calmed the storm when the fishermen thought they were all going to perish, that same God still holds your life and your good in his hands, and he cannot let you fail. Hope is not a feeling that we chase, church. It is a person that we pursue who found us first, and his name is Jesus, and he has already defeated what is trying to crush you, so hold on to him. Yes, the beasts of this world are scary. Yes, they can be more and more terrifying. When I was 12, my first girlfriend broke up with me. I know, bad move for her. I thought my world was over. And as you get a little older, as you see different things in life, you see what God has brought you through, and those things seem very insignificant now. And what I'm trying to tell you, church, is that Jesus has already carried you through. He's already defeated what's trying to crush you, so just be obedient to him. Be faithful and watch what he does. Live the way he's called you to live, and he will give you all you need. So if your body is failing, know that he's still the resurrection and the life. If your marriage is hanging by a thread, know that he can weave beauty out of brokenness. If your children have wandered, don't forget he is the good shepherd who leaves the 99 to find the one, and he is faithful to bring them home. And if your heart is heavy, know that he is near. His promise is that he is near to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Because you might feel buried, but church, the reality is you are just merely planted. The same power that raised Jesus from the grave is working in your weakness right now, so don't give up. Look up. Keep your eyes up. The darkness will not have the final word. Hope will. And his name is Jesus. And when the beasts of the sea rise, appointed time, he sits on his throne, he holds court, and he holds you in his palm safely, securely, and in power to defeat everything that would rise against you. So trust that he's capable. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you for your truth and for hope. And Lord, my prayer for us is just that we would trust you. God, that we would know that you're good and that these promises that you've been given to Daniel and throughout Scripture, they're not just for people of antiquity, but they're present and they're for us today. So God, would you speak? Lord, would you speak into the depth of the heart that is fearful right now? Would you speak into the depth of the marriage that is hanging on by a string? Would you speak into the depth of the fear of the parent who is seeing their child wander? God, would you speak to the depth of our bodies that are failing, of investments that strike at the core of our security? God, would you speak into the depth of the things that we fear most? And when we take that authority that we've given those things and place them where they properly belong, which is in front of your throne, God, that you would strike them down, you would take away their dominion, and we would follow you